Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Soprano Street, and today we will discuss whether or not Christopher went to hell for Tony. Not whether or not he went to hell because of Tony, we already know that. But whether or not he went to hell for Tony. Now, this is something Chris stated throughout his life.
That's the guy, Adriana. My Uncle Tony. The guy I'm going to hell for.
And even after his death.
That's the guy. My Uncle Tony. The guy I went to hell for.
Which not only puts to rest Polly Walnut's theory that he would be in purgatory, but also opens the door to truly evaluate if he did go to hell for Tony. In this episode, we will look into whether or not he did by examining Christopher's life, the level of Tony's active participation, Micheal Imperioli's own revelations on the character, and an almost completely overlooked statement he made after his death, which provides remarkable insight into Christopher's character and may hold the answer to this whole question. It is important to note here that Christopher did have other goals in life outside of the Mafia. Despite not being particularly talented, he greatly desired to write and break into the movie industry. This is a desire he has shown since the beginning of the series.
You know, my cousin Gregory's girlfriend is what they call a development girl out in Hollywood, right? She said I could sell my life story, make fucking millions.
And even goes on to make a movie, Cleaver. Also, in sharing these desires with Adriana, he made this statement.
I'll get back to the writing someday, but from a position of great wealth.
Implying not only that the movie industry was his first interest, but also that the Mafia was a means to an ends. So this may not have been a situation like Henry Hill in Goodfellas.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Or even Jimmy Burke.
Never wanted to be a sports star. Never wanted to be a fireman. Never wanted to be anything other than a criminal.
Also, unlike those two Chooches, Sean Monty and Matthew Bevilacqua who weren't capable of doing anything else, Christopher knew he had other options.
As far as male modeling, I'd probably be a success, but I wouldn't want to be around those fucking people.
So what was the reason Christopher went down the Mafia path, and to what degree was Tony responsible for it? Now, while Tony's intentions with a grown Christopher were well documented throughout the show...
So, over the next couple of years, more and more, I'm going to be giving my orders through you. And then finally, only through you.
His intentions with Christopher since childhood can't really be known, since Chris is a baby when the movie ends and a grown man when the series begins. That middle portion of his life is left almost entirely up to the imagination. However, this interaction, essentially comparing Tony's treatment of a young Jackie Jr. to his treatment of a young Christopher...
What else did you say? That the life's good enough for me, but not for little Lord Fuckpants?
certainly implies that even if Tony didn't encourage Christopher to enter the life, he didn't try and stop it like he did with Jackie Jr. So the issue then becomes the degree to which Christopher was trying to pull away versus the degree to which Tony was trying to keep him in. It's important to note here that Tony did offer Chris and everyone else a chance to get out before their making ceremony.
All right, you know why we're here. So if you got any doubts or reservations, now's the time to say so. No one will think any less of you.
Now, I've seen interviews with ex-street guys where they say they've turned down the offer to get made, sometimes more than once. But I've also seen interviews with ex-mob guys that say it's kind of an offer you can't refuse, so to speak. And with Tony, it seems to be more the latter. While it may be easy to justify Tony's opposition in the beginning of the series as a fear of being snitched on, more so than a fear of Christopher leaving,
I'll fucking kill you. What are you gonna do, go Henry Hill on me now?
this next interaction leaves the distinct impression that Christopher's freedom to leave before being made wasn't as secure as Tony made it out to be during the ceremony.
I'm gonna go back in there and be with my guests. Exactly 10 minutes I'm gonna look up. If you're not here, I'm gonna assume that you went to look for whatever the fuck it is that's calling you out there. And that I will never see you again.
So not only did Tony make it clear to Christopher that he shouldn't leave, despite the superficial invitation to do so, he also actively encouraged Chris down the Mafia path, both in word and in action. In addition to giving some general wisdom and words of advice, which wouldn't be uncommon for an older wise guy to give to a younger one, Tony shows a specific intent of keeping Christopher on the mob path.
Forget Hollywood screenplays. Forget those distractions. Huh?
And even goes so far as to make sure Chris is covered when his trip down that path goes a bit off-road. Incidents such as Christopher's first hit, which wasn't approved, and robbing Connolly Trucking, which belonged to Junior, could have had far more severe consequences for Chris had it not been for Tony's intentions with him.
Here, it's good.
He's coming up.
Okay. He works for me now.
And as we now know, Junior had Chris's father killed for laughing at him, so just imagine if Christopher did have to switch crews. Tony not only encourages Christopher towards a life of crime in the general sense, he channels the memory of Dickie Moltisanti, which is bound to be a sensitive issue for Chris, in order to get Chris to commit specific crimes, like the murder of Detective Barry Haydu.
Chili and your old man were in the can together. Chili stabbed your old man's soulmate to death. So when your old man got paroled, he tracked down Jilly. Took out his eyes so bad he couldn't even put a glass on it. Loyal, your old man.
Now, it would be very easy to argue that Christopher killing Detective Haydu was revenge for the murder of his father, and not the result of some sort of Machiavellian puppeteering by Tony, that Tony just pointed him in that direction, and the rest was on him. But Christopher's interaction with Haydu before killing him suggests otherwise.
You're being set up. He's lying to you, whoever he is.
Wouldn't make any difference.
What do you mean it wouldn't make any difference?
He wants you dead.
Chris let it be known in no uncertain terms that this is for Tony. His own personal interests or motives are completely irrelevant. He is committing murder for Tony. This dynamic is further reinforced later in the series when Christopher chooses Tony over the love of his life, Adriana, and sells her out to get murdered. At this point, all signs are pointing towards Tony being the reason Chris goes to hell. Tony didn't try and prevent him from joining. He encouraged him to engage in violent crimes while shielding him from the consequences of those actions, and even got him to give up aid for execution. But this is where things get interesting and the door gets open to look into Christopher's own nature, as well as his overlooked statement from hell that puts everything into focus. Micheal Imperioli recently did an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, and when referencing how dysfunctional the Sopranos were, he described Christopher as being doomed from the start, from birth. It's almost like it's imprinted in his genetics, which definitely brings up the nature versus nurture debate, because as Dr. Melfi would say, it's not always a simple one-to-one proposition. And the other aspect of this is addressed later in the interview, when he said that he imagined Dickie before the movie as being more like Christopher, more hot-headed, but he wasn't. He was a more composed character, which made me think that a lot of Christopher's defects and addictive compulsive nature actually come from not having a father. This characterization of Dickie as a more composed character can be argued, especially when contrasting how the two reacted to being betrayed by the loves of their lives. And it's in that difference that the truth of Christopher is revealed and his path to hell comes into focus. The supposedly more composed Dickie killed Giuseppina immediately upon learning of her betrayal, whereas Christopher stopped short of killing Aid and walked away. Now, it could easily be argued that Chris didn't have the heart to do it, and that's the only difference.
I can't do it. No, please don't make me do it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Now, while it may be true that Chris just didn't have the heart to do what his father did, it is irrelevant in terms of this conversation because after he left, he had time to think, and he chose Tony over Adriana. Or did he?
Do you know why a shark keeps moving?
They gotta keep moving or they'll die. They can't breathe or something.
There's a psychological condition known as alexithymia, common in certain personalities. The individual craves almost ceaseless action, which enables them to avoid acknowledging the abhorrent things they do.
Abhorrent? What certain personalities?
Antisocial personalities.
Even though this took place during a session between Dr. Melfi and Tony, it applies to many of the Sopranos characters, including Chris. We get a glimpse into this side of Christopher early in the series.
Look at this fucking place. You imagine spending day after day in here, year after year?
But it is brought into focus after he walks away from Aid. He is contemplating leaving the mob life, which is essentially the path to hell, until he sees this and changes his mind. He isn't picturing memories of him and Tony when he decides to give up aid. He is picturing himself in a boring life and couldn't take it. He chose excitement over safety, and Tony offers that through the mob life. But that still doesn't necessarily mean that Tony was his path to hell, since the movie industry would have offered the same excitement. So was it the mob life that Christopher craved, or was it just excitement in general? The truth to that question is found in an overlooked statement that Chris made after his death.
The 60s ended. Neil Young gave that speech from the womb. Then came the RICO statutes around when I was born. I wish I had come before that.
I wish I had been born before RICO. That statement tells you everything you need to know about Christopher Moltisanti. Now, it's important to note here that he is in hell at this point and knows it. This isn't some abstract idea that someday I'm going to hell like we see throughout the series. He is there now, and his wish was that he was born before RICO. Why? Because that would have made it easier to be a gangster. Even in hell and outside of the influence of Tony, he is still thinking on how he would have been a better gangster. This tells me that despite Chris's blaming of Tony, he was a gangster to his core, and entry into the show business would not have changed that. Chris was destined to go down that path, and Tony's role in his life, in that sense, was interchangeable. Chris would have went down that same path with Paulie, Sil, Johnny Sack, or some random gangster in Chicago if he'd been born there, but he was born a Moltisanti in Newark, so Tony's filling of that role was due entirely to proximity. Well, thanks for watching another episode on Soprano Street. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.